Hello, chess friends, and welcome to Jozarov Chess Channel, and welcome to the last game of the Julius Baer Generation Cup in 2023. As expected, we have really a drama going on here between Alireza Firouzja and Magnus Carlsen. In the grand final, it was really an up and down. The first two games ended with a draw. Then the third game, Magnus Carlsen won because of a huge opening blunder by Alireza Firouzja. But then in the fourth game, it was really epic. It was so crazy. Alireza Firouzja turned things around after a long battle that lasted for more than 100 moves. Alireza Firouzja won the fourth game and forced basically the Armageddon game, which finished a couple minutes ago. The Armageddon game was also so beautiful, so spectacular, and as usual, we always have really a big epic match between Magnus Carlsen and Alireza Firouzja. So let's see now what happened in the last game, in the Armageddon game, in which Alireza Firouzja had 15 minutes on the clock. Magnus Carlsen had only 9 minutes on the clock, but of course Alireza needs to win the game. If the game ends with a draw, then Magnus Carlsen is the winner of the Julius Baer Generation Cup. So let's see now what happened with the white pieces. Alireza opened with the move e4. Magnus responds to c5, the Sicilian. We have knight to f3, and then from e6, the French Sicilian, we have now the move b3, which is now the so-called Western attack. The idea is clear, to develop, of course, the dark square bishop in a good way, forcing maybe some open position with the move d4. Here in the continuation, we have a6 by Magnus Carlsen, because if you play maybe knight to c6, I would not say it's a mistake or something that black is playing, but then probably you get this one, bishop to b5, and then we battle simply for the e5 square in a good way. We have a good development, so it's a tricky line, I think, than to face from black's perspective. Magnus prevents this idea, as I said, with the move a6. We have now the move g3, which is not really the optimal way to play in sort of a double fianchetto style, what Alireza did here, but I think he wanted to trick here a little bit Magnus Carlsen with this move order, so nothing romantic is going on so far, but as I said, really not the optimal way to play this type of structure. So we have d5 by Magnus. Magnus is saying, you had enough, now time to develop yourself. Now I'm going to hit you in the center because you have never battled so far for the center. So after move e takes d5, we have e takes d5, and now bishop to g2, knight to f6, normal development, kingside castling, bishop to e7, and here after this move, Alireza makes, I think, a good decision. He forces now a reaction in the center of the board. What Alireza is trying to get here with this move d4 is force an isolated d-pawn situation for black. What to do here from black's perspective? Magnus simply castles. He said, okay, I'm not worried about these types of positions because I have a good development. I will get my knight on c6, maybe my bishop to f5. So although it's kind of tricky to play against both of these bishops that are cross-roading all over the board, Magnus Carlsen, I think, is familiar with these types of positions, so he's not panicking. He's first securing the king, of course. After move knight to c3, now Magnus continues the pressure, forces basically also now Alireza to make a reaction here in the center. Alireza went for this line, knight to a4, hitting the pawn on c5, and Magnus now releases the pressure in the center by playing move c takes d4, knight to d4. Mission accomplished for white, I think. Here Alireza has gained the isolated d-pawn situation that he wanted to get, but it's not one of those really weak positions of the isolated pawn, because I think black has a decent activity. The knight is already dynamic here in the center of the board. The bishop's activity is so far perfectly fine, so it's really not one of those isolated pawn that would bother me. If we advance the pawn, then of course we have a good position. So it becomes now the common strategy of the isolated pawn. Black wants to advance the pawn and white wants to create a blockade against the isolated pawn. So we have bishop to g4. Provocative move by Magnus Carlsen, and here Alireza already didn't react correctly, because Magnus is of course trying to get maybe this kind of move, f3. With the move f3, okay, you're kicking away the bishop, but now you have severed dark square problems. Really tricky move here by Magnus. If you play here something like bishop to d7, then you could of course continue with bishop to e3, but this would be maybe a way for Alireza to get out of this mess. It's maybe not also the optimal way. Actually, the suggested move here after move bishop to g4 would be then knight takes c6, and after something like b takes c6, black would get rid of the isolated d-pawn situation. Now white can continue with queen to d3, and this would be, I think, a playable position for both sides. But Alireza has to win the game. He has to complicate things, and now he played a bad move, knight to e2. And from this point on, I think Magnus sent some blood. He really noticed this mistake by Alireza Firouzja. He played immediately the beautiful rook to e8. He's putting more pressure against the knight on e2. Alireza continues with f3 now, but now after bishop to d7, it's a different story. The queen is a little bit overloaded to the defense of the knight, which is not a good continuation now for Alireza after move bishop to e3 that Alireza played, because it's a must move to play at least against the isolated pawn that you have provoked in the beginning. If you play passive move like knight to b2, which seemed to me like a maybe good choice to then get the knight on d3, this wouldn't be good, because that's the position that the player with the isolated d pawn wants to play. He wants to advance the pawn, and now you cannot take here knight takes d4 because of bishop to c5. Look at this, bishop to e3 is not possible because the rook is already occupying this file. So as I said, bishop to e3 has to be played, but now look at this, the rook is now attacking the bishop. You lose another tempo. Magnus again uses this moment and plays a beautiful attack against the knight on a4 with the move b5. And what you do, for instance, if you play knight to b2, this wouldn't be good. Look at this, bishop to a3 is going to happen. You're hitting the bishop and also the knight. White will be forced here to play the move bishop to c1. This wasn't played in the game, but look how dirty Magnus Carlsen's ideas are already here with the move b5. Look at this, bishop to c7. Now we play queen to b6. You play king to h1, and now d4. Again, the strategy that black wants to get with the isolated d pawn, simply advancing the pawn. So it's not working. You play something like, I don't know, knight to d3, bishop to c1, and I think here black should be much better because of the space advantage of this pawn on d4. Also, what you could play in this particular position is the move knight to b6, but still it's not working. Look at this again, Magnus Carlsen will probably play the move d4. Really wild stuff. You have to play with the bishop here on d4. If you take it with the knight, then the knight is hanging on b6. After bishop to d4, now we take you can of course take out also here the piece on d4, but now with rook to a7, black will solve all of the positional problems. You can take takes, but now you have to step back, and look at this, this bishop is cornered here on g2, and eventually this bishop will come into the game. We have occupied all of the files that are important, the open D and E file here from black's perspective. So I think this game is a one-way ticket in black's favor, although black is down a pawn, but the activity, the huge activity that black is here would I think Magnus Carlsen use for sure. So you see after move b5 that Magnus Carlsen played here, Alireza went for knight to c3, but now another brilliant follow-up by Magnus, rook to c8. Look how loose really the pieces of whites are. They're simply playing on too much dependency here. The knight has to be protected by this other knight. If you move, for instance, this knight somewhere, if you create the blockade, then the knight on c3 is weak. So this position, I think, is slowly but surely collapsing here for Alireza Firouzja, although it doesn't seem so, because still, of course, white is simply relying on this blockade. But Magnus Carlsen is so brutal in this attacks. He's still threatening also the discovery attack against the bishop. So that's why bishop to f2. Alireza loses now another tempo, but now this beautiful idea, bishop to a3. Anyway, with the preparation, you play bishop to b2, and still you see the knight is loose here on c3. So there are many tactical opportunities. I really don't want to show you now what happens if that happens. That's not the point of this game, but I think we can really sense that Alireza is here really in huge position problem. So we have now rook to b1. Alireza is preventing bishop to b2, but now knight to b4. Here Magnus keeps the attacking flow, and after move rook to e1 that here Alireza Firouzja played, now Magnus makes maybe the first inaccuracy, but it's not one of those inaccuracies, mistakes, or something that could maybe cost black the game. But Magnus played the inaccurate h5. But look how beautiful Magnus Carlsen could have played here. He should have played simply the d4 move that we have expected now many times in the game. The d4 move is the move that you want to play with the isolated d pawn. As I said, it's your whole strategy, whole concept that you're relying on. Look at this, what happens if you play knight to d4, then of course the knight on c3 is loose. If you play bishop to d4, then the issue is bishop to f5 is going to come into the game in a brutal, spectacular way, so it's not working also this move. And if you play queen to d4, then of course knight to c2 leads into a fork against the queen and the rook. So very wild stuff. d4 was almost the winning winning idea here for white. Of course, for black, pardon me. White doesn't have to react. White doesn't take out the pawn on the d4, but it would be a devastating position to allow this kind of move here from white's perspective. So that's why, as I said, first h5 was not so good by Magnus Carlsen, but still he's better here. Here still is black is much better, although as I said, d4 would be the most beautiful move of the tournament for sure. So queen to d2 by Alireza. Alireza is fighting back here. Knight takes c2, beautiful tactic by Magnus, which simplifies the game enough. After move b4, Magnus gets back, and now after move b takes c3, knight to c3, we have this beautiful idea, rook to e1. The problem is now that you cannot play bishop to e1. If that happens, you guess the next best move, d4 immediately. Look at this, really wild stuff. If you play queen to d4, then bishop to c5 is going to happen. If you play knight to e4, then bishop to b5 would be the dangerous move. Then with d3, which would be, I think, a devastating, and again, position. So tricky ideas here for black. So as I said, after move rook to e1, you have to pick up now the rook with your rook, not with the bishop. And now bishop to b4. Magnus continues the pressure. We have bishop to d4 here. Alireza protects everything, but Magnus simply continues the pressure with queen to a5. We have rook to e3, bishop to c3, bishop to c3, and now Magnus simplifies the game enough by picking up here the pawn on a2, and still, of course, he has this weak pawn on b3. He has the occupied the c file, so in my opinion, again, a much better position here for black. So after queen takes a2 here, Alireza continued with the move h3. Bishop to f6 is not working here because rook to c1 is going to happen. You have to now cover, and then bishop to b5 is winning the game on spot, so this is not working. So after move h3, queen to b3, we have g4 by Alireza, and now queen to c4 by Magnus Carlsen. He is hoping, of course, to trade off the queens. We have queen to d2, d4 by Magnus, which forces again the trades of queens, and here black is of course better because you have the extra pawn. White is of course the bishop pair. Maybe in some wild lines you can force this into a draw, but in my opinion this should be completely winning endgame, although Magnus is completely fine, of course, with the draw, because in the argument again game with the draw, he still wins the game for sure. So after move rook to c1, we have king to h2, rook to c2, pinning the bishop, rook to e7, threaten, of course, bishop to f6, then followed with rook to d7. We have bishop to b5, rook to e1, knight to d5, and here Magnus simply pushed away this bishop and included now the knight in a beautiful way into the game. Knight to e3 forces here this tactical sequence, which leads again at least into opposite color bishops endgame. So in those types of endgames, of course, it's a thematic draw whatever happens. So basically black cannot lose the game. Actually, black is here much better, although as I said, in a fully endgame stage maybe white can squeeze a draw out of this, but this is not enough, of course, for Alireza Firouzja. King to f4, rook to d2, hitting the bishop, again attack against the bishop. King drops back here to h7, and now after bishop to f8, g5, kicking away the king, and now even threatening now the checkmate here on g2. So that's why Alireza has to create some breathing spaces. h4, king to f3, bishop to h3. Magnus is taking now many pawns, and after king to e3, rook to d1. Now a mistake here by Alireza Firouzja. He plays now the move king to f2. King to e2 would be the accurate move, at least kick away here the rook from this active square. Although, as I said, again, it's not working here for Alireza Firouzja. He's simply not satisfied, of course, with the draw. He tried king to f2. Magnus played now h3. Bishop to f6. Magnus takes on now also the pawn on f4. We have bishop to e5, and now rook to d2. A better maybe idea here for Magnus Carlsen would have been rook to f1, which could lead really into a beautiful tactical sequence. Look at this, king to e2. We play f3, and after rook to d2, rook to f2. We drop now back with the rook, and now f2, f1 is simply winning the game on spot, so there's nothing that can be done. This is game over. But Magnus Carlsen played a slightly inaccurate move, rook to d2. Alireza goes with king to e1. We have now a beautiful move here by Magnus, again f3. We have rook to e7, and now after move king to g8, rook to d2. Now Magnus pushes the pawn on f2 and is threatening now the promotion, and there is only one way here to survive this attack in order to get a draw. But as we said, Alireza is not satisfied with the draw, but actually you have to play here rook to g7. After something like king to f8, you play rook to g5, and after the promotion, you get this one. You have at least this rook to f5 possibility to force the trades of pieces and then go into a thematic draw. But here after move f2 that Magnus played, Alireza played the bad move g5. Magnus here promoted, and after g6, queen to f2, queen to d3, and queen to f5. In this particular position, Alireza Firouzja resigned. Pooh! Great epic battle between the two of them. Very crazy Armageddon game. Alireza risk, I think, in the opening stage. Maybe she should have played more solid a solid opening line to force somehow Magnus Carlsen to go into maybe time pressure. But in this opening choice that he played, I think Magnus got very easily out of the opening, had this isolated d pawn, which I think he handled in a perfect way. Great game by Magnus Carlsen. We have to say Magnus had only 9 minutes on the clock and he played almost a perfect game here. So of course he is now the deserved winner of the Julius Baer Generations Cup in 2023. Congratulations to Magnus. He's really in top shape again. That's the Magnus that we love to see, of course, but he's, I think, really enjoying in this rapid time formats where, as he also mentioned now many times, that he is not enjoying so much in classical chess, that he's enjoying in this epic battles where things can go wrong, but still he can get out of this mess sometimes. So you see, he's has sometimes even a lost position, but he can squeeze sometimes also the game into a draw or maybe turn things around into a win. So that's the Magnus that we love to see. And as I said, he's the deserved winner of the Julius Baer Generations Cup in 2023. So, okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. Interesting Armageddon game for sure. If you want to see some other games that we have covered so far, check out some links of some analysis before. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and what do we say? Chess is the best, of course.